Brooke's self-destructed future resisted rehab program. My children learned to depend on their mother, and so had underdeveloped coping and adaptation skills. Their mother unintentionally was stealing those coping and flexibility skills from my daughters by doing everything for them and making sure they had little opportunity to hurt themselves or get into trouble. One of the most heinous things my daughter's mother did was to put them in conflicting positions of choosing to be honest or to lie to their father, to me. Their mother asked them to not tell me that they had been given Apple computers as presents because I allegedly hated Apple computers so much that I would be unhappy with them, with my children. It was true that I preferred Microsoft Windows over Apple and its operating system, but that was primarily because Windows was at the heart of everything I did for work. Even artists and musicians and sound designers that used Apple computers have handed off those assets to me in Windows formats and PCs. Ironically, I have purchased and owned several Apple computers over my lifetime, including Apple Macintosh, 2FXs, normal Macintoshes. I even did so when I was with their children's mother. She knew that I accepted and liked Apple computers for what they were good at, and likewise liked Windows computers for what they were good at. Because Apple and Windows computers were good at different things, I had a history of using and owning both brands of computers and both operating systems, so it made no sense that their mother wanted to instruct them to lie to me about Apple computers. My daughters wanted to love and believe in their parents, both their mother and their father. I did everything that I could as I grew up to bite my lip to avoid bad-mouthing or slandering their mother, despite how much wickedness and lack of empathy that I perceived she had inflicted on me over the years, and especially at the end of our relationship. Similarly, I believe their mother tried not to badmouth me as well. However, she indirectly slandered and insulted me in the eyes of my children by telling them how irrational and emotional I would be should I learn that they were given new computers from their grandparents on their mother's side because they were Apple branded. Let me summarize this. Amanda and Brooke were told to lie to their father to please their mother, and if they did not lie to their father, they would make their father unhappy and angry with them. Amanda and Brooke were conflicted because they had been told lying is bad, but now they were being told not to tell their father the truth, thus to lie. My children did what they were told. They lied to me for months about having Apple computers, well, not having them. They went so far as to ask about maybe needing a Windows computer as a ruse. My children continued to lie to me. They hid their move to Berkeley for almost 6 months while I was in Canada and on extended work trips in Europe. As deception and lies were exposed, I was able to confirm each lie's origin was my daughter's mother trying to cover something up or believing that she was avoiding a conflict. My daughter's mother was an imperfect role model because she both practiced and encouraged and even directly asked for dishonesty, lies, deception, manipulation. These were the tools in her tool bag, and they were flexible in their use. I tried so often to be engaged and part of my daughter's lives, but the barriers put up by their mother were so frequent and plentiful. And her undermining my relationship with my children included limiting my presence as a role model and advising deception to manage me and my reactions. All their mother did was instill insecurity in my children that their father was not there for them and was someone to be afraid of, both of which were unequivocally untrue. Her praise of me revolved around my being the reliable ATM dispensing cash on a regular basis. Ironically, I would pre-write 6 months of checks at a time, so she always had them the day she needed them, first day, every single month. There was no doubt the check would arrive. It was already there. It was obvious. It was an uphill fight, pushing a boulder ever upwards in hopes of reaching the hill's crest. Like Sisyphus, where I could spend time with my daughters, with openness and understanding and trust. But like the myth of Sisyphus, where he was damned to hell or Hades to push a boulder up a hill only to have it roll back down to the valley below, crushing him as it did. But he would rise up and return to push it hopelessly up the hill once more. And eternally the torment would loop on Sisyphus. The boulder would always roll down over him, and he would always return to push it back up. And smash, repeat. I was Daddy Sisyphus. I tried to be there for my children. I tried in person where they lived and where I lived. I tried phone calls. I wrote insightful messages and cards for them. I invested money for them. I sued for custody to save them from their mother and the threats and the dangerous environments that she was putting them in. Nothing I was able to do gave me a relationship with my children, and they were hurt because of it. My children's mother taught them that lying and being dishonest had its place, and so integrity became malleable and negotiable. Situational ethics was being taught. No longer was there truth or right, but shades of gray to be reviewed and discussed. And thus their mother empowered Amanda and Brooke to become their own lawyers with personal attorney-client privilege, such that they could lie and not be compelled to admit it. After spending over $25,000 in attorney fees and being informed there was literally no chance that I could win custody of my children, I had hit a wall without an alternative. I had to accept the evil in the world that separated me from my children. And that evil was crafted by their mother, whom I have labeled the WB, or the wicked bitch. I have avoided saying that to my children because I do not see how that benefits them. But for me, it's a lancing of my wound. Over time, I came to recognize that Brooke's mother was wildly inconsistent with them. Brooke's mother was like Robert Louis Stevenson's 1886 novella, where he wrote of multiple dueling identities within a trained good Dr. Jekyll and how he transformed into the murderous serial killer Mr. Hyde of infamy. In those competing personalities, Brooke's mother tried to be Dr. Jekyll, but she succeeded at being good most of the time. But there were times her mother did not stay true to her self-avowed be a good Dr. Jekyll. She had seemingly become permanently postpartum depressed, and I believe was forevermore clinically depressed. Her loneliness and depression were too much for her at times, and so she would drink one glass and then many glasses of wine most evenings. In those inebriated times, Brooke's mother ventured out on dates with people, usually co-workers or a current manager from work. In fact, she married 2 of them, each being her manager at the time. But that is her story, not mine to tell. Each new husband was bad for my children, for different reasons. I will not go into those tales, as I believe those are also my daughter's stories to tell, not mine. The key takeaway for me was that Brooke's mother had flexible ideologies where she operated under entirely different priorities. One priority was my daughters, and the other priority was her dating life. She was unable to bifurcate them or do both concurrently. As Dr. Jekyll, Brooke's mother was overly doting and a hyper-involved worrywart helicopter parent that espoused her sole purpose in life was to care for and raise her children to become the greatest people ever. But as Mr. Hyde, Brooke's mother gallivanted at night and weekends as a desperate single mother in search of her Mr. Right, but usually settled for Mr. Right now, and then she and my children would suffer the fallout consequences. Amanda and Brooke saw their loving mother abandon them and leave them to fend for themselves, even right after a day in the park where she was there with them every second with smiles and ready to treat any fall or scrape. Brooke's mother's contradictory dichotomy was too much to ask of little kids to understand or process or adapt to. I believe it messed up my children's childhoods and their values. It was not until their late teens that they overtly challenged their mother's dominating, albeit inconsistent, values. My children found their voice and subsequently their identity, despite their mother. The long-term consequence of my children's mother being so inconsistent during their upbringing was their confusion over what good and bad were, based on what they had seen and what they had been told. Not always were they the same thing when they were with their mother. It was obvious that they wanted to do whatever was required to be loved and valued and to be successful. And it was obvious that their mother was unable to provide a consistent answer to that very question. And she left them alone to satisfy her sexual and relationship urges. My children needed and deserved role models with consistent messaging and expectations, and discipline and reward. They did not have that growing up. I blame the WB for that. Back to Brooke's road to recovery. Returning to Berkeley, Brooke spiraled out of control, abusing drugs and ditching school. She would stay out all night and sometimes not return for days to home. Her mother was freaked out and was at her wit's end. Her mother pressed for Brooke to be taken by force to a wilderness rehab program for troubled teens. This time it was Open Sky Wilderness Camp. Bounty hunters were hired to visit and capture Brooke when she had returned home. A huge Samoan man with his little blonde woman partner confronted Brooke. "You need to calm down. You can have a few minutes to express yourself. Then we are going to go to the airport together. We are going to fly to Colorado. We are going to a program that will care for your addictions. It is in the mountains. You will have a good time. You will get better." Brooke lost it. She screamed and she ranted. She ran around. She threw chairs and shoved a table over. She grabbed a bookend and smashed it into the glass coffee table, shattering it. A few minutes passed and then the man spoke clearly, slowly, calmly. "Brooke, you have had time to express yourself. We are going to go now. Do you want to do this yourself, or do you want me to do this for you?" The man held handcuffs out for Brooke to put on. Horrified and shocked, Brooke flailed and screamed more. The Samoan had experience with dealing with troubled teens and was prepared for this moment and eventuality. He just walked up calmly to Brooke, grabbed her arm, twisted her down to the ground like a doll, and he cuffed her. She was a teenage girl and had no chance to resist a professional bounty hunter. Brooke was off to Open Sky Wilderness. She flew to Colorado from Oakland International Airport with handcuffs occluded to the public by a jacket draped over them. They rented a car and stayed overnight in a motel en route to the distant mountains of Colorado. They gave Brooke shoes during the day and took them away at night so that she could not flee. There were night and day guides that were also guards. The program had a small helicopter to search and rescue and capture any runaway teens. There was little chance that anyone was going to escape Open Sky Wilderness. The program was led by a yogi. He was a new age weirdo that espoused people should lean in and find the family. But be real and be yourself. He was full of babble that had no substance. He had silly phrases like, "Let's use our sit muscles," to ask people to sit down on dirt. Again, weirdo. And definitely alien to my way of thinking. I had misgivings about open sky wilderness, but Brooke's mother was adamant that it was the only thing that could save her. Well, it did not save Brooke. It cost a crazy amount of money, and Brooke just went straight back to using drugs the moment she was released from the program. Brooke called her mother and pleaded to return to Berkeley and swore that she would be good and be clean. Her mother was easily duped by Brooke's rehearsed sobbing and dramatic motions. However, Brooke quickly resumed her self-destructive, partying, drug-abusing ways upon returning to Berkeley. Everywhere there were triggers for her. Friends encouraged illicit drug use and partying. Without responsibilities, and storefronts and music or street corners and seeing people, all of those things, they were just triggers. They all reminded her of her beloved dope in the times that she was high. It all inspired Brooke to resume her bad lifestyle. Perhaps worse than Brooke's draw to a destructive lifestyle, she completely abandoned her integrity. I wondered how someone could flip so completely and turn dark. I wondered if Brooke might be, sadly, a sociopath. Silver was probably a sociopath, and Cynthia had strong indications of it. I had no idea, but the idea crossed my mind as a way to explain her repeated jumping off the drug abuse cliff. Brooke being a sociopath could have been consistent with her apparent learning what to say to manipulate people and police and psychiatrists, as opposed to natively relating to those people and their views and emotions. Brooke was delusional in her right to adventure without commitment. She insisted that she could live under a bridge and eat creek snakes and drink creek water if she had to. She had no idea of the reality and its harsh jaws and claws. She had never known threat or pain or harm. Her mother's helicopter parenting style both shielded her and ensured that she did not learn coping and adapting skills. Open Sky Wilderness failed to help Brooke. She needed help. Real help.